Hi, Jesse. This is Barry J.
Hey Barry, how's it going?
Good. How are you, sir?
Excellent, man. Excellent. Are you ready to do this?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Thanks for asking me.
Yeah, let's do it. All right.
Awesome.
So right off the bat, were you always a horror fan, or did it just so happen that your first few projects happened to be horror?
Good question. I am a nerd, long-time, lifelong horror fan since I was a kid, and my walls were papered with posters of Universal black and white horrors, famous monsters of Filmland magazine. I mean, just it goes way back to when I was too young to be watching the horror movies I was watching at my age, like The Exorcist and Carrie and Halloween.
So you mentioned some big names there. Was there anything like, kind of off the beaten path that caught your eye when you were a kid?
You mean in terms of favorite horror films?
Yeah, like maybe something lesser known. Was there something that stuck out, like that you watched when you were growing up?
Well, I got very, very addicted to the silent movies and the black and whites of Universal. I could tell you everything you want to know about Frankenstein, Dracula and the Wolfman, The Bride of Frankenstein, Son of Frankenstein, Phantom of the Opera, and Nosferatu in 1922 is one of my faves. And for a kid, that's a little unusual, I think.
Yeah.
I was also a fan of Charlie Chaplin, but that's not horror. So I was really drawn to the melodrama. I was drawn to the depthness of the characters. To me, the Frankenstein monster is one of the most complex characters in movie history. And I absolutely just got so into the darkness of this all. I was a little bit of a dark kid, with a bright side, but definitely I was just mesmerized. Also by things like King Kong and how you did it. Wow, how they get King Kong on top of the Empire State Building, and I started learning about stop motion animation and Ray Harryhausen, and so this is a lot of things attracted me, and this goes way back.
Yeah, I read that you kind of started making films when you were a kid, but obviously Ashes and some of these other projects, that's a big step. Was it a little were you a little anxious kind of going into a project of this scale, this magnitude?
Well, yes.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly fine, man.
Yes. Yes is the short answer, but I had written 2 films for Terror Films, The Chosen and Patient 7.
Yeah.
And I wrote a wraparound for Patient 7, which is a really cool little anthology if you're an anthology fan. But I digress. But that gave me experience on the set, how it's done, and I was bit by the bug. I knew I wanted to sit in the director's chair. I knew I wanted to do a horror movie. And Ashes was so close to home because it is based on my family and something that actually happened in my family, and a lot of the stories in the movie are true stories.
Wow.
Except for like crazy deaths and stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of the stories told, are actually from my real life. So I didn't think anybody could really kind of do what I knew I could do to it, because be as close to it as I was. So I just said, why not? I just want to do this, and I'm going to write, produce, and direct it, and just kind of take a stab at the world of horror because I love it so much.
Yeah, I was curious about what prompted the transition from just like writing and to get you in the director's chair, and so that's really interesting. That just because it's so close to you is kind of what led to that leap. Looking back at those other films, do you wish you maybe would have taken that jump a little sooner, or was it easier just to make that transition with something that was so close to you?
I think it made it easy. I think, those 2 films were enough to get me wanting to do it. And then, Ashes being so close to my heart, made it easy for me to say this will be the first one.
Yeah, and is that difficult for you as a writer to kind of like, you work on this project, you work on this story, to kind of pass those reins onto a different visionary? It's
filmmaking is such a collaborative effort, even though I was sitting in the director's chair and I wrote the script, I rewrote it. I rewrote lines because the actors, would say, it feels more natural to say it this way.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, go for it. You've now become the character, so if it feels more natural, go for it. I was rewriting, some stuff the night before because I had a better take on the theme after a few days of shooting. So it was actually very helpful to be in the director's chair as the writer, to be able to do that and to be able to take suggestions and make changes without having to check with the writer.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, so it actually was, and I look, honestly, you can ask anybody, I leave the ego at the door. I don't believe in it. It's a collaborative effort. I'm surrounded by some incredibly talented people, from the actors to the crew, and they have good ideas too.
Yeah.
So if someone has a good idea, I'm all for it. Our director of photography, Jay Lee, was a teacher for me. He was someone I admired in horror. He did Zombie Strippers, Alice Kills, and a bunch of others. And, for him to come on board as the DP and walk me through my first shot list, it was definitely film school.
Yeah.
And I'm just grateful.
Yeah, Alice Kills is fantastic, so that's a pretty awesome to have that guy in your corner.
Yeah, so awesome, right?
Yeah. So that kind of leads me to where I was actually wanting to go. How close were you to kind of picking the people that were around you, not only with the crew, but with the cast as well?
Very, very close, because everybody, I either knew them like Jay Lee, and then he suggested Laura Liefring, who brought in Sue Sinclair for makeup.
Gotcha.
And, so that's how I got to know Laura. And Laura, to me, they're geniuses. They just make magic happen. And they make it fun, and they're smart, and they're creative, and they're collaborative, and they're just, I want to use them on every single movie. They're just wonderful people. I call them Laura Sue on set, because they're like one. So there was a lot of, our executive producer had some clients that became the cast. I was friends with Casey Knight, Casey James Knight, who played Chip. Laura Liefring's roommate became Ronnie.
Yeah.
So it became a lot of who we know and who we know who knows them. And it was entirely a great crew. It was like a family, and it was the same crew on my next film, Killer Therapy, because we just all loved doing a movie together, and we just did another one, and basically it was 99% the same people because they were available. Yeah,
the makeup, I would assume the budget wasn't too big for this film. The makeup was extremely exceptional, just based on what I saw. So I wanted to applaud you for that, since we were kind of touching on it.
Thank you. Thank you.
But also kind of...
That's all Lauren too, so they're amazing.
Kind of going off of that, and without spoiling it, there is a scene where something gets caught in someone's throat. And it caught me off guard, and it was one of those scenes where I had to watch it a couple times, and it was absolutely stunning. And I just want to know, what was that process like? And how it just looked so great, man. It just looked so great.
Thank you. Well, Elizabeth Keener, who plays Ellen, we had ways with the camera to make it look like she was doing what she was doing, and she said, "Oh no. She goes, let me actually put it all in my mouth and pull it out. It'll disgust me. It'll come off great." So she was really doing what you saw her doing, and we were all cringing. It's like I said, I've never loved you more when it was over.
Yeah, anything for the art, dude. I can't tell you how good that looked on camera.
Oh, thank you. That was a fun scene to write and a fun scene to get together, and it was also that was a one take, because we knew with the budget we're at and the mess that it was going to make. That, okay, gang, this is it. Everybody in places. Yeah. This is just going to have to be, pulled off. We had a lot of cameras going, and it worked. Well, it worked. That was a really fun day.
Yeah, it definitely worked, and that's something that's really awesome to hear, especially considering I knew it had to be a one take, just because of, like you said, the mess it would make. Were there any issues that you faced on set? Like, I know that's a good story, but do you have any bad stories, and like, how did you overcome them?
I don't have any.
Well, that's good, man.
Yeah, we all loved showing up. We got our work done. We had fun doing it. Most days we were done early.
Really?
Yeah.
That's wild.
It's an incredible cast, and we all, it was like a party. We just loved showing up and hanging with each other and making this thing. And we didn't do tons and tons of takes of everything. We probably did about 3 takes tops for each scene.
Well, I think a little bit of that might have to do with the choice to kind of tell the story through interviews. And I was curious as to, like, was there a reason behind that type of style, or was that something you had kind of settled on since the beginning?
I did settle on it from the beginning because it's so simple. You know the show Modern Family?
Yeah.
I was a fan of it for a while, and I thought, no one's ever done a horror movie with sort of like the unseen interviewer. Like, don't explain it. Don't ever show the interviewer. Nothing. I just know that they're talking to someone I can't see, and I accept it.
Yeah.
And it seems to work, and it helps. It helps the narrative. And I thought, I always knew I wanted to use that tool. And I thought with Ashes, that would be a really great way to progress the story, to tell about Aunt Marion, to tell stories of the past. Just sit on the couch and, in my mind, it's some foreign student making a documentary,
Yeah.
Who just never gives in, no matter how bad it gets, and they agreed to it. But it didn't matter. I knew it would work. I knew it would work like it does in Modern Family, like it did in Harry Met Sally. So I'm certainly not the first to do it. I just thought it was the first for a horror movie, and it could be fun.
Well, that, and I think the characters like really kind of helped with that style because they were interesting, and you kind of said it yourself that they kind of made it their own, as the movie went on. So I'm assuming that same thing kind of took place on set. I wanted to let you know that, like, after I watched the film, I kind of was digging around, reading like what other people thought about the film, and that was something that most people really enjoyed, was that aspect of it. It kind of kept everyone interested, and like when something would start to kind of like not necessarily get dull, but like when the movie would be telling a little bit of the story and it would jump back to them talking on the couch, I think a lot of people really dug that, and I think we're just kind of trained to get interested again. And so I thought that was really an interesting choice.
Thank you. I found it engaging, and I'm a horror fan, so I'm just trying to think about what I like.
Yeah.
And as a horror fan, and it is something about breaking fourth wall and doing interviews like that, like in Blair Witch when they interview the townspeople. Mm-hmm. Something about that is just naturally engaging to me. It just is. I just want to hear what the regular next door person has to say about a situation. The person who's close to it.
Well, yeah, something Richard Linklater did that movie with Jack Black, where they went around and interviewed like a bunch of the local townspeople, but they weren't actors. They were actually interviewing them about a real life person, and then they put those interviews into the movie because they were doing like a biopic of a particular character that actually lives in Texas. So
wow.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting because a lot of the interviews were super candid, and it was about the real person, but yet they spliced it into this biopic. It was an interesting choice, and it ultimately worked out.
Oh, that sounds cool.
Yeah, I mean, Ashes was definitely cool, and you kind of touched on it a little bit ago. Killer Therapy, your second film, it's in post-production now. Can you?
It is just technically wrapped like this week.
Okay, great. Can you tell me a little bit about it and like what we're in store for?
Yeah. It's it's a really cool little story that the title alone, Killer Therapy, inspired the story for me. So it was one of those things, title first.
Yeah.
And the title was so cool. It was actually an LLC title. Me and my friend and I created this LLC. And if you notice, somewhere, Ashes is produced by Killer Therapy LLC. And I thought, wow, it just seems a shame to just throw that away with an LLC name. And I asked my partner in the LLC, and he said, yeah, go for it, write a script. So I did. And to me, it was about therapy and a disturbed young boy who sees a lot of therapists growing up for his anger issues and his biting and his low self-esteem, and he's just a little mentally challenged. But they all somehow steer him wrong. And then one day, he snaps. He's like 22, 23 years old. He snaps and decides to hunt them all down and kill them for messing up his mind and his life. And what was great about this is I was able to, it's a little bit bigger budget than Ashes, and I was able to outreach to some of my personal favorites from the iconic movies, horror movies of my day, like Carrie and Halloween and Return of the Living Dead and Friday the 13th, Part 1 and Part 2 and Part 6. and Rob Zombie's Halloween with Big Ferrich. So I was able to get P.J. Soles, Adrian King, Tom Matthews, and I'm just like, wow, Elizabeth Keener's in it again. But it is a much darker story than Ashes. It's where Ashes has some comic relief. You're kind of looking for any type of comic relief in Killer Therapy. It's more like a Silence of the Lambs or a Joker.
Yeah.
It's just really dark. It deals with, molestation as a child. It deals with bullying, an abusive, angry father, mental illness. They adopt a daughter. The family adopts a daughter. And this throws the kid because why adopt her? Because he's not good enough. That's what he thinks.
Yeah.
And he never liked her. And of course, in return, she feared him because he was always a little off. So it's a really cool story told through a lot of therapy. And I hope the horror community embraces it, especially to have all those great legends together in one film after so many years away,
Well, what intrigues me as a avid moviegoer is that with Ashes, like you said, every time that it would start to get a little tense, there was a little bit of relief, and that's exactly what I wanted to hear. Was that with this there is no relief? So I'm excited for that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, if I had to say, this is more true to my roots and my heart of horror. I didn't intend to do a horror comedy. I can't say I know a lot of horror comedies I'm a fan of, maybe a couple, 2 or 3. It just so happens it was my family, so while writing it, it slipped in there and I started chuckling. I said, leave it.
Yeah.
So, but with this, no, it's dark. It's dark and just keeps getting darker.
Is there an expected release date, or have you guys thought about that yet?
We're going to hit all the festivals. We so far submitted to about 40 of them.
Awesome.
So we'll see. And then I'm going to go shop it out. The trailer is going to be ready in about a week and a half. And I'm going to probably drop that on a lot of the horror blogs and sites that we all love so much. And then we'll take it from there. It took me a couple of months to get Ashes distributed, but I want this one to go into theaters.
Yeah.
So at least 60 to 100 theaters, like Art House. It's very Art House. It's got a really cool feel to it, and it spans a lot of time, which is nice. We have 2 actors playing, the young boy grows up into the adult, and same thing for Aubrey, his sister, his adopted sister. So it's really interesting to you get to age Tom Matthews from in the marriage.
Yeah.
From making him look younger to more like today, and it was a really fun movie to make. It was a much bigger film with the settings and the high schools and the asylums and all that. So.
Well, I mean, you're definitely selling it. I'm very excited to see it and check it out once it becomes available. I wanted to ask about Never Hike Alone while I have you.
Sure.
So you're listed as a producer. What was your involvement with that project?
Well, I had a lot of involvement with it. I definitely financed a lot of it.
Awesome.
I saw it on Kickstarter. A friend of mine sent me the Kickstarter link and said, "Oh, this is right up your alley." I'm a huge Friday the 13th fan. Did I make that clear enough?
Yeah.
Huge. So yeah. So I read what the guy Vin DeSante had to say on the site for Never Hike Alone, and I was like, me and this guy were just like meant to meet. Like, this is like, I need to be a part of this project. And it just so happens I knew Tom Matthews.
Yeah.
Through a mutual friend of Tom's, me and this other friend of his. As a Christmas gift to me, we had a Christmas dinner, and there was Tom at the table. And I was like, oh, you're killing me. You're killing me. And she had known ahead of time and brought some stuff for him to sign out of my own home that my housemate helped her orchestrate. I'm like, I'm dying. So I've been a fan of Tom's for so long. So I told this to Vincente, and he said, you know Tom Matthews? Do you think he'd be interested? I could write a closing scene. And so the whole thing, that whole scene with Tom at the end, only came into existence because I knew Tom and thought I could get him. So I just asked Tom. By the way, the nicest man in the world.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Oh my God, is he so nice? And he hadn't acted in a long time, and he has his own contracting company. Kind of wasn't thinking about it anymore. And he said, "Let me see the script," and he read it. And the rest is, Friday the 13th history. He said, okay, let's do it. Let's bring Tommy Jarvis back. And then, of course, when I had Killer Therapy, I was going to do a little interesting take. I'd written it as a married couple, man and woman, I should say. And then I just wanted to be different, and Elizabeth Keener wanted to do something different. And I said, what if it's two women who adopt, who they had one kid, through inception, and one that they adopted. So it was going to be two women. But then in the back of my mind, I could not stop thinking about Tom. And I sent it to him. He literally read the two female scripts, and I explained to him, like, if you really want the role of Rachel to be a husband, because I was asking him to be one of the therapists. So I said, while you're reading, if you think you'd want to be the husband, I think you'd be amazing. And if you want to do it, I'll rewrite it back to the husband. And he wrote back, goes, oh, I want to be the husband. He just loved the role. And by the way, he kills it. Like, God, this guy is a good actor.
Yeah, well, that's exactly why I wanted to jump from Killer Therapy to Never Hike Alone. Because, it was such an amazing, punch in the gut, like whenever he kind of shows up at the end of Never Hike Alone. So that's such an amazing connection, like that. It's like full circle, and I love stories like that.
Oh, it's great. And we both knew, like, suddenly, Never Hike Alone is a good film, of course, but when you have Tommy Jarvis and Tom Matthews at the end show up,
yeah,
you've just elevated yourself.
Yeah.
It just becomes a more important fan film.
Well, that and the tone was just so perfect. Like, it just
so perfect.
And when with him jumping into it at the end, it's just like, okay, not only did you make a cake, but you put the cherry on top. And,
yes. Exactly.
What else can you guys do? It was that was what was so interesting about that fan film. And I also you also wrote some Star Wars fan film or fan.
Oh yeah, my friend Dark, God bless him. So Dark is a survivor of cancer, and he wanted something to keep him, kind of motivated, and while he battled. And I love Dark, and he'd not done a script before, didn't even have final draft and stuff, and he knew I wrote, and he came over to me and to my friend Baz Hawkins. And he said, would two of you read my script and help me with it? But, of course, we said, you know, and honestly, didn't even want credit, just wanted to help Dark. But he kept us on it, because we did help revamp the story and rewrite the script. And, of course, then I formatted it for him and showed him how it's done and told him to get final draft and all that kind of stuff. So it was really a first venture for him. Now, he's all the special effects and all that kind of miraculous stuff in the film. He did it all.
Yeah.
That's what he did before he got sick. So it's pretty spectacular to see a fan film of that level with special effects. I was like, wow. Yeah,
that
looks
actually,
really good.
I watched the trailer right before you called, and I was I was kind of blown away, just because I had no expectations going into it, because I mean, there's so many Star Wars fan films, and when I watched the trailer, I was like, holy shit, this is one of the good ones.
So did you recognize Chip, the blind paranormal guy, as the Jedi?
Yep.
So I said, Dark, I've got the perfect Jedi for you. And Casey's a friend. He's one of my dear friends, and he's also a Star Wars junkie. So it's either horror or Star Wars.
Yeah, why not? What else is there?
So yeah, that's another reason Dark came to me. He goes, look, I know you know how to write, and I know you love Star Wars. So I said, you've got to see Casey. He'll be the right Jedi, and he's a Star Wars. You need a Star Wars fan in a Star Wars fan film. It's got to be organic. So he loved Casey. Yeah.
So you tackled, Friday the 13th has your name on it. Star Wars has your name on it. What franchise would you want to kind of, close? What else do you want to get involved with?
Oh, I love Night of the Living Dead. I would love to do something with that. That's just one of my favorites. It's really hard. I would like to do. Fan films are real passion projects.
Yeah,
and I enjoy them. Clearly, I enjoy them. I haven't really thought about any in particular. I just know when they come in front of me, if they spark joy or not.
Yeah.
So these two definitely sparked joy. But I have always wanted to do something with Night of the Living Dead, because that's one of my favorite films of all time, and Halloween is my favorite horror film of all time. Well, they're doing plenty with that one.
Well, that's perfect, because to wrap up, I've been asking every interview. Halloween is coming up, and what do you?
Oh, I love it.
What do you, Barry, think of the idea of changing Halloween from the 31st to the last Saturday of the month?
I'm absolutely, hands down, 1,000% against it.
Perfect.
It is what it is. It lands where it's meant to land. It's part of the chaos and the beauty of that day. It will always be October 31st in my heart, and I think in everyone's heart.
Well, yeah, everyone's saying, from what I'm reading on these online petitions, is that the excuse is safety, but I don't see what I don't know. So you're telling me, it's convenience. It's convenience, but I mean,
it's convenience. Safety is going to be more crazy if it's always a Saturday. If it's a Thursday, we might have a little open in more safety.
Yeah, it just blows my mind, and I wanted to kind of end on that, just because it is coming up. Is there anything you want to throw out?
It is the end of October. It is the most beautiful ending to my favorite. For me, it's Halloween and Christmas.
Yep.
So to end my favorite month of the year, you watch horror movies every night until the 31st, and on the 31st, and that ends the month. And that's how it's got to be. So yeah.
Well, that's all I have for you, Barry. Here at Cinedump, we let the doers know how they're doing, and Barry, you're doing just fine. I definitely appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Jesse. Really good to talk to you.
Yeah, you too. This was a blast, and I really enjoyed. I know a lot of reviewers and interviewers. They kind of just say, I loved your movie, but I really had a good time watching Ashes all the way through, and I really liked the characters. They jumped off the screen to me, and I'm sincere when I say I'm very excited to check out Killer Therapy when it hits my desk.
I'm looking forward, and I hope we can talk again then. And thank you. That means a lot to you about Ashes.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Awesome. Well, have a great one, Jesse.
You too, buddy. Thank you for your time. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.